Okay, so today we spent some time on writing chemical formulas and coming up with the formulas and putting your little pieces of paper together. So now we have to learn how to work backwards, and it's a little bit more difficult, but with enough practice you'll get there. And that's the important thing, is if you don't practice enough, you're never going to get this right. Okay, so you really, really, really have to practice. So let's take a look at the rules of getting the name from formulas. So if you have the formula, remember that's the symbols from the periodic table, then the way that you go about it is that you name the cation, which is the positive ion, first. It's always going to be listed first, and then the anion second. Okay, it's real easy. You just say the name of each. But there's a couple of things that you have to add in there, of course. So the cation, all you have to do is state the name and decide if you need a Roman numeral. Which ones need a Roman numeral? The transition metals, so groups 3 through 12, and the group 14 metals. Okay, so if it's in the column number 14, then they need a Roman numeral. And the way that you decide what Roman numeral it is comes from the other element that it's buddied up with, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, so that's the cation. State its name, decide if you need a Roman numeral. This next part is the anion, the second symbol. All you have to do, if it's a regular element, is change the ending to "ide," I-D-E. So chlorine becomes chloride, sulfur becomes sulfide, phosphorus becomes phosphide, selenium becomes selenide. Okay, so you just change the ending to "ide." But if it's a polyatomic ion, then all you have to do is state the name, because you have those memorized. Okay. There are 3 elements on the periodic table that don't require Roman numerals, and I want you to circle them on your periodic table right now. Pause the video and write down: silver is always +1, Ag+. Cadmium is always 2+, and so is zinc, always 2+. Those do not need Roman numerals to tell you what the charge is. Okay, so let's do some examples, all right, and follow our steps from the previous slide. So the first one, Na. Na, you just state the name, sodium, and then you decide whether or not you need a Roman numeral. Well, is sodium in groups 3 through 12 or in column 14? No, sodium is in column 1, which we know is always the 1+ column. So you do not need a Roman numeral. You only need a Roman numeral when you're dealing with an element that's in groups 3 through 12. Okay, the next one is state the name of the second element and change the ending to "ide" if it's a regular element. So bromine becomes bromide. Boom, you're done. That one's called sodium bromide. Okay, let's try the next one. This right here, Pb, stands for lead. Does lead require a Roman numeral? Lead is right here in column 14. Okay, number 82 right here, lead. So since it's in column 14, the answer is yes, it does require a Roman numeral. Well, qu'est-ce que c'est que cela is the Roman numeral. How do you figure that out? You have to look at the other element. Okay, we know that this is chloride, at least. And the thing that we know about chlorine, so you kind of have to do a sidebar. The thing that we know about chlorine is that it is Cl-1. Well, how many are there of the chlorines? There's 2 of them, right? So that means that the total charge was 2- over here. How many leads are there? 1 lead, right? There's only 1 lead over here. So that means that it had to be what? 2+ in order to balance out, because it has to equal 0, if you recall from the other day. So that means that my Roman numeral then is a Roman numeral 2. Pb 2+ means that it's lead 2 chloride. Okay? All right, let's look at the next one. CaF2, calcium. Does calcium require a Roman numeral? Nope, because calcium is in the second column. Okay? So then we've taken care of calcium, no Roman numeral necessary. What's F? Fluoride. Remember, it's Fluoride. So fluorine becomes fluoride, no Roman numeral necessary. You're done. All right, final one. Fe. Fe is iron. Now, iron does require a Roman numeral because if you look at your periodic table, iron is in column number 8, which is not a charge column. It's not one that we know automatically, so we have to figure out what is the Roman numeral. Well, we had 3 chlorines, right? Cl3, 3 chlorines. So that means if we only had 1 iron, that it had to be 3 plus. So that means that our Roman numeral is 3. Roman numeral 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then you just finish it out. Cl is chloride. Okay, next we have metallic bonding. All right, so we've talked about ionic bonding so far. Next up is metallic bonding. So metallic bonding is the attraction of free-floating valence electrons for positively charged metal ions. So these are known as delocalized. In other words, they're not attached to one particular atom. They're able to float and move throughout the entire sample of the metal. Okay, so in metallic bonding, they have what's known as the sea of delocalized electrons, and this gives metals their properties. Metals, as you know, are very soft and bendable usually. That's known as malleable. They can be hammered out flat and made into shapes. So make sure you know that word, malleable. And metals are also ductile. They can be drawn into wires. Okay, your whole house is filled with copper wires for your electricity. And it also makes them good conductors of electricity, this sea of electrons, because electricity is the flow of electrons. So if you have a bunch of electrons that are able to move around very easily, then obviously they're going to be able to conduct electricity very easily. So let's look at a little video here that should help you to see and understand this a little bit better.
Most metals can be flattened into thin sheets and drawn to produce wire. Let's look at the bonding in metals to see why. Aluminum atoms contain 13 electrons. 10 of these occupy the first and second energy levels, and the remaining 3, the valence electrons, occupy the third level. Instead of remaining identified with individual atoms, these valence electrons are shared by all the atoms of the sample. The bonding in metals is based on the attraction between fixed cations and mobile valence electrons. Metals typically do not resist being shaped because the metal cations easily slide past one another, cushioned by a constantly moving sea of valence electrons. The sea of valence electrons can also move to carry an electric current, which explains why most metals are good electrical conductors.
Okay, so hopefully that made it a little more understandable. Why is it that metals have the properties that they do? So there's a special kind of metal which is known as an alloy, and that's when you have 2 or more elements, at least one of them is a metal, and they're usually melted together. Okay, so brass is an alloy, is an example of an alloy. It's copper and zinc that are melted together, so that's a brass lock. Or if you live in a house that was built in the 80s, a lot of times you still have brass fixtures like a brass faucet or brass doorknobs, brass knuckles. So those are 2 metals melted together, copper and zinc in that case. And then a very special kind of alloy is known as an amalgam. Okay, and anytime you melt mercury with something else, that's known as an amalgam. Your parents, probably not you, but your parents might have those metal colored fillings. Those are mercury, silver, and zinc all melted together. Mercury's poisonous, but when it is melted with silver and zinc, it forms this amalgam that's perfectly safe and is very hard and tough and can stay in your teeth for many, many years. Okay, you may have heard of alloy wheels on a car. So those spinners on your 1997 Honda Accord that are worth more than the car itself, those are alloys. Okay, alloy wheels. It's aluminum and another metal melted together to give it strength and make it extra light. Up next, we'll be looking at our final type of bonding, which is known as covalent bonding or molecular bonding.